The Relatives Came. The story is written by Cynthia Rylant and is illustrated by Stephen Gamble. Stephen Gamble illustrated this book. That means that he drew the pictures in this book. Him and Cynthia Rylant, she wrote the story and he drew the pictures. They work together, like we sometimes work together with our group work, and we share our thoughts with each other, and we help each other out in that way, right? So this is what they did. They came up with this great book that I'm about to read to you. So, The Relatives Came. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop, and some boxes of crackers, and some bologna sandwiches, and up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning, and when it was still dark, before the birds were awake. It's pretty early, huh? I think it's early. They drove all day long and all night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia. But they thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Then it was hugging time. Talk about the hugging. Those relatives just passed all around the car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Then it was in the house, and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. And finally, after a big supper, 2 or 3 times until we all got a turn around the table, there was quiet talk, and we were in 2s and 3s through the house. The relatives weren't particular about bed, which was good, since we didn't have any extras. So we squeezed a few in with us, and the rest slept on the floor. Some with their arms thrown across the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and the leg across the other. It was different, going to sleep with all the new breathing in the house. My book is falling apart. Those relatives stayed for a few weeks. They helped us tend to the garden, and they fixed any broken things they could find. They ate up all our strawberries and melons. Then they promised we could eat all their grapes whenever we came to visit Virginia. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing with each other. What do you think their feelings were for each other? Why? Why do we feel that way? Why do you think that? Because of the way they're acting, the way they're so happy around each other. You obviously think they love each other. They are kin. They're family. Finally, finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chests and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds, and it felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. Have you ever had a place that you had to leave that you didn't want to? Maybe it was the beach. Maybe it was at a relative's place. Maybe your grandma's house. Maybe your mama's house. Maybe your aunt's house, your brother's. I want you to turn to a partner. I want you to go knees to knee and eye to eye with a partner. I want you to talk about that place just for a moment. I'll give you a couple seconds. And then we'll return to the book. Talk about how you felt. How did you feel when you left? Or when you had to leave and you didn't want to. Okay. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at all the strange houses and the different mountains. They thought about the dark purple grapes waiting on them at home in Virginia. They thought about us too, missing them. They missed us too. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled in their silent, soft beds and dreamed about next summer. I want you to take a look at this photo, and I want you to tell me the illustration, which means the drawing, the painting in this book right here. Tell me some colors that you see. There's some blue, and there's some purple, and there's some green, and there's some yellow. Why do we see so much blue and purple? Because of why? Because of their grapes. Okay? That's why. Based on the family that you saw in the book, where do you think that family was from? They never did say, did they? They never did say. We knew that family was from Virginia. But I'm guessing they left that up to you to decide where the family was from. So I want you to talk with a partner. Talk about where you think it is and why. Tell them why that you think it is the place that it is. Okay.